And we are live. Welcome to my stream. Anyways, so I hope we had a good day today. And oh, right. And let's just get to it. This is John. I'm gonna show you guys a couple of topics that I'm very interested in covering today, because you know, as one doom scrolls. Okay, there we go. Much better. As one doom scrolls throughout the day, you know, you look at some stuff and you think, who am I gonna argue about it today? Luckily for me, I don't just have to argue it online, like in comment sections. I can also, yap my own ear off right here in this stream. So welcome. Let's get right into it. I got three main ones. This first one, I've been seeing this type of mood shift, right? With conservatives and certain, representatives, even law enforcement. They, some of these people, this specific crowd on the right that, still supports the way ICE is handling everything. Fair. They seem to not be okay with, I'm sure they're putting protesters, on the face of this argument, but they don't seem to like that people are, practicing free speech, freedom of the press. We have here British Council Vice President Anita Greenberg Belly. That's a cool name. Let's hear what she has to say.
I do want to say
about one of our constitutional rights. Am I right? Anyways, and as we do, I'm going to grind some Elden Ring. Okay. Without further ado, actually, you know what? A little further. I need to go get my medicine. One second. Alrighty. My frames dropped for some reason. So let me double check this. I don't know what's going on here. What the heck? There we go. It's up again. Now it's going back down. I don't know what's going on. Anyways. No! Oh, that's my buddies.
I do want to say all life is
Anyway.
precious.
Jesus. Apparently we can't call people names now. Why? Who knows? I refuse to believe we're actually hurting their feelings. I don't think these lunatics have feelings. Just kidding. Normal person. It's totally normal to have, opposing views.
And it is a tragedy
Except my views oppose everybody's. I'm so cool. I'm a centrist. Hey, whatever.
to see anyone get killed. And especially
Oh, hold on. My first issue with this is she's about to speak in a certain tone where she's disregarding the violence. She's gonna disregard the violence that ICE officers are engaging in, and maybe in her eyes, in conservative eyes, they see it as fair due to the fact that some immigrants, a good portion of the immigrants that have been detained, okay? Now, not even a good portion. Let's look it up. Let's make sure. Let's double check. Okay. How many illegal immigrants that have been detained. Wait. Since in the past year are violent criminals. There we go. As of late 2025, about 5%. 5%. That's an H3 reference, okay? Of individuals detained by ICE have convictions for violent crimes, while 73% of detainees have no criminal convictions. Although total arrests increased, the percentage of detainees with violent criminal records dropped from 9% in January 2025 to under 5% by October 2025. The vast majority of those detained are non-convicted of violent crimes. Okay? Hopping the border is a civil. What's it called? It's a civil offense, okay? It's like jaywalking. That's what it is. Obviously, there's a lot more argument into that, like how illegal immigrants affect the economy and all that stuff. Well, if anything, I know this is going to be a crazy thing to hear, but illegals do pay taxes. Some of them don't, just like some U.S. citizens don't. I mean, it's a broad spectrum, okay? Obviously, so except they don't get any benefits, okay? So there's that. The way immigrants affect the economy is, for example, public schools, right? Let's say a city, the state provides funds, for public schools, and as the population grows, then obviously the state needs more funds to make more schools, blah, yada yada, like that. They don't get any health care. Some of them, very few, are eligible for like state funded health care, but only a few, and it's pretty tough to get in, I think. What else? They don't get any tax benefits. They don't get any retirement benefits, and nothing like that. Okay, just saying. Anyways, so 5%, actually a little below 5%, may I add. But anyways, let's watch Councilwoman defend the Gestapo. Just kidding. Apparently, they're not the Gestapo. They're more like the SA, like of the Nazi Party. I just learned that they're less like the Gestapo because apparently the Gestapo was like an actual secret police that they weren't going out like in broad daylight to kidnap people like ICE is doing. No. The SA were the ones that were sent to go get the Jewish people. That's who did it. So ICE is more like SA. Check it out. Of Nazi Germany. Okay. The SA was the Nazi Party's original paramilitary wing known as Brown Shirts. Crucial for Hitler's rise by disrupting opponents, guarding rallies. Oh my goodness, I cannot talk. Guarding rallies and intimidating through street brawls, but they lost power after the 1934 Night of the Long Knives, a purge led by Hitler against its leadership, particularly Ernst Röhm, transferring authority to the SS. Comprised mainly of young, working class men and ex-soldiers that were central to Nazi street violence against rivals like communists during the Weimar Republic. Political tools, their brown uniforms and marches projected strength, protected Nazi meetings, and spread propaganda, helping the party gain support in a turbulent Germany. Millions of members who were essentially intimidated position. Declining. Wait, hold on. Where? Gestapo. Shit. What? So they were more focused on like intimidation. Okay. So I'm gonna look up the Gestapo. Never mind. I might be wrong about the SA and the Gestapo. Gestapo. Okay, the Gestapo, short for Geheimstaatpolizei, secret state police, was the brutal official secret police force of Nazi Germany, established in 1933 by Hermann Göring. I don't know, and later managed by Heinrich Himmler as a key instrument of the SS. They operated outside legal constraints to identify, arrest, and eliminate perceived enemies of the regime, playing a central role in enforcing the Holocaust and suppressing dissent. Never mind, I take that back. The Gestapo. That's exactly what ICE is. That's exactly how ICE is engaging in, detaining illegal immigrants and taking them in. And we don't even know how many of them are actually getting deported, because apparently, and I'm gonna look this up. Has ICE lost track of, let's put it on quote, disappeared illegals? Oh, whoops. Reports indicate concerns that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has at times made it difficult for legal counsel and family members to locate individuals detained during immigration enforcement actions, with some complaints alleging that 48 people were effectively disappeared in New Mexico in 2025, while federal agents often follow procedures. Reports suggest some detainees are held without immediate accessible records. But that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. ICE. Illegal immigrants. So, shit. Peer. Under. Or something like that. I don't know how to word it exactly. Okay, advocacy groups and legal representatives report that immigrants in the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's custody sometimes disappear from federal records. Whoa, 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 whoa! They changed it. This is not what was being reported. What was being reported is that ICE wasn't properly processing detainees as they were coming into the facilities. And it said that there were like hundreds of people that were disappearing because they couldn't keep track of them. Their family members haven't even been able to locate them. They're not even informing their family members on what's going on with them. Whoa, 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 whoa. They changed it. Why is it giving me a different answer? I'm gonna look that up on YouTube. Anyways. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to... Okay, anyways.
When you think of the 12-year-old girl, Jocelyn Lungari, when she was killed, could you imagine what her mother
And she's going to bring up
lives for the rest of her life? Laken Riley.
Laken Riley. Now, it's pretty unfair for people like this that have a specific agenda, right? That they got to follow. It's pretty unfair to bring up, criminal cases like what happened to Laken Riley, what happens to a lot of victims, because there's evil people in the world. You can't just group one group of people and generalize like the broader scope. Okay, it's pretty unfair to do that, because you could say that about any race. Okay, this isn't about race. You could say that about any types of group of people, right? You could be like, okay, what's the race? What's the sexual, what do you call it? Preference? No. Like mass shooters, okay? If we're gonna generalize about that, you're gonna scare people into thinking, oh, okay, well, I mean, are they all white? It's pretty unfair to do that because then you kind of instill this idea into people that, okay, we should get them all out of here because they're all going to be like that. And in there lies a dangerous, dangerous aspect of instilling these types of broad, like, descriptions of a group of people. Meaning, this lady is going to bring up, like, tragedies, horrific crimes that were done by illegals, right? And she's not gonna, like, further, like, exactly describe, like, what happened. She's not gonna state facts. She's just gonna mention it for pass by pass how do you say it? She's gonna mention it in passing because she's trying to make a point, right? So obviously she's not gonna be super specific, but the problem there is that because she's not being specific, because she's not going into detail, because she's just using invoking crimes that happened, to prove a point, then it becomes a little dangerous because then people have the wrong idea. And at the very least, not the full picture. My camera is going down, but I don't know why.
Rachel Warren. We can go on, but not only
Well, yeah, but you could also make a list of all the kids that, tragically are get their life cut short because of mass shootings and school shootings and stuff. But that would also be unfair because obviously not everybody is a school shooter. You can't just group in a certain group of people with the rest because that's not fair. It gives people the wrong idea.
them, all the drugs that were pouring.
Also, let's take away the illegal immigrants and let's bring in the argument that, well, if it wasn't if it wasn't because we were letting just anybody in when we're not, then these kids, these people would still be alive. Yes, but let's not pretend like they're just coming in. They're jumping over. They're forcing their way in. Yeah. Isn't that up to Border Patrol? Isn't that why all of us, our tax money, isn't that why we have all these federal agencies to protect the border? Doesn't that mean they're not doing their job properly?
Into this country, killing 100,000 people a year. That's
Okay, let's look that up. How many people? How many? Yeah, okay. People do. Wait. Why am I here? Oh, I'm making new tabs for no reason. How many people a year do illegal immigrants kill? Okay. Data on homicides committed by undocumented immigrants is limited, with Texas being one of the few states to track such statistics. In 2016, Texas data indicated that the conviction rate for murder was lower for undocumented immigrants, 1.8 per 100,000 compared to the native-born Americans, 3.2, whatever that means, per 100,000. So, okay, but I'm just looking at... So she just made that up. And I'm gonna copy and paste. Copy, due diligence, right? And paste. And comment. Like I said, they just kind of just say some broad points in passing because they're trying to prove a point, and it's pretty dangerous. It's pretty unfair. She just made that up. She pulled it out of her behind, because she's trying to follow a certain agenda that was instilled by the people that rule over us, pretty much.
It's unbelievable. How about all the trafficking of children and human trafficking?
I mean, yes, there's human trafficking, trafficking of children, yes, but that's not exclusive to illegal immigrants doing that. That illegal immigrants hop the border, like the vast majority of them, because they're looking for a better life. They're not looking to come over. Now, this is, I'm going to say this, I'm speaking on Mexicans, okay, on behalf of, you know, Mexicans, because, I got family, and, I'm just saying, I think I can talk for Mexicans. I don't know about Salvador. I don't know about Hondurans. I don't know about any of those. I know. I work in construction. They're pretty lazy when it comes to work. That's all I know. That's all I know about them. Okay, so that I'm just speaking like on Mexicans. The vast majority of them are coming over here to look for a better life. That's it. It's that simple. The whole human trafficking and tying in like horrific crimes, it's per individual. It's not like per group of people. That's pretty unfair to say. And this is how you brainwash people into just making stuff up in a professional environment, and then it kind of in the back of people's mind, it's like, hey, I remember this representative talking about immigrants this certain way, and she was in a professional setting, and she's like this important councilwoman. I'm gonna believe her. That's how easy it is to brainwash people.
This is just wrong. So I feel bad for
And also, what even is the argument here? Because she's upset that people are calling ICE Nazis, and it's like, I mean, first of all, First Amendment, bitch. Second of all, what is that hurting your feelings, or are you mad that we, the normal people, don't like the way ICE is handling the situation of going after illegals? Also, our dear leader promised the worst of the worst, but now they're just meeting a quota of 3,000 per day, right? So, what is this even
every
about?
life that is lost.
Also, I just know. Listen, I'm gonna make a wild, huge guess and say she's maybe a pro-life type of person. Regardless, obviously she's conservative. I'm gonna make sure I am actually correct on it. You know what? No, I'm gonna trust my gut. And it's like, listen, lady, you people don't actually care about the lives that are lost. You only care about following a rhetoric. Just like you're not actually pro life, you're just pro birth. But that's just my opinion. What is that based on? Shit I see online and shit I read like on ground news and stuff.
But not only that, we have to recognize that
Did she write this down?
ICE is not the problem.
No, ICE is not the problem. It's the people that ICE is employing, is hiring, randoms. Just like we saw with that one journalist lady where she went to go, okay, journalist applies for ICE. Large deed, right? She was hired on the spot, pretty much, almost pretty much, and she didn't even complete the forms properly. She didn't even give them like her full information, and she was hired. Okay, they're just hiring like random people because they're just trying to get people out there, to control the masses.
And if people,
People don't like the way they're doing it. Like, for example, with Obama. conservatives love to bring up Obama, and it's like, you people didn't have a problem when Obama was doing it. The thing about when Obama was doing it, and I'm not a fan of Obama, you know, his policies on whistleblower, I'm not even going to get into Obama right now. But Obama, the administration, when he was president, they would fix the problems right away. Nobody was getting executed in broad daylight, like Rene Good, like Alex Peretti. Okay, that's the difference. Yeah, you can say Obama. Yeah, Obama was doing it. Obama holds the record, right, for like most deportations. Yeah, people didn't have a problem with it because they were doing it the right way. It got to a point where, you know, there were certain like violations of human rights. There was the kids in cages. That was during the Obama administration, but they fixed it. They dealt with it. You know, they corrected it. That's the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration dealing with immigration. But they don't like to bring up this stuff. They don't like to bring up the actual facts, or at the very least, you know, provide some sort of actual nuance to the conversation.
You're laughing. That's really sad to me.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're probably just smiling or grinning at the fact that you're just making stuff up, at how ridiculous it is that you can just sit there with a straight face and spew the typical talking points that a certain part of the conservative group engages in.
Because the problem is this: you just chose to laugh. I did not laugh before you spoke.
It's probably because of how ridiculous you're being.
But the problem is this, that there are
normal people aren't against enforcing immigration. Normal people are just against violating human rights. That's the whole thing. If this administration right now was doing it the right way, because they had such a good chance to do it the right way and do it even better than Obama, nobody would be complaining, except maybe obviously for like the freaks, like the colored hair, extreme Hassan Piker types of lefties, right? Yeah, obviously. But nobody would care about them. You wouldn't have these insane, huge protests out there completely bashing this administration. You wouldn't have that because nobody had it when Obama was president, because they were doing it the right way.
people demonizing them.
At the very least, to a certain degree.
When they're doing their job, trying to be safe.
There's, like, people have cell phones, lady. Everything is recorded. ICE is coming up to homeowners in their property and saying, hey, I heard your accent. Where's your ID? That, literally, not bar for bar, but in their own words. And I need to show the context, obviously. So, okay. ICE goes up to home owner for his accent.
Not allowed. This is private property. You're not allowed. I don't care.
What country are you
You're
from?
not allowed.
What country are you from?
What
I'm
country are
from
you
this country.
The man says, I am from this country, and obviously he has an accent.
You know what, sir? Now talk.
But an accent is not probable cause. It's not a good reason to go up to somebody and ask, hey, where are you from?
Talking to you, hearing that you have an accent, I have reason to believe that you are not born of this country.
So because this guy has an accent, he has reason to believe that he is not from this country. Like, how do you know he wasn't raised in a home where they only spoke Spanish and then they taught him English to a certain point in their lives, and they have an accent because of it, because their parents maybe have accents. Now, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to think about, but it's like, why do you need to discriminate this way? This is what people have a problem with the way they're doing it. Not that ICE exists. There's a lot of lefties, crazies, obviously, that want to abolish ICE, but because of what's going on.
You just
So
raised an accent?
what country are you from? Do you have any documentation?
Living here, I do have a documentation.
Show me the documentation.
I'm not allowed to show you my documentation just because
Yes,
my
you are
accent.
required to, sir.
You're not.
Yes, you are.
No, you're not required to. Are you required to show ICE documentation without probable cause? You are not required to show immigration documents to ICE agents without a warrant signed by a judge, even if they stop you in public or come to your home. You have the right to remain silent, refuse consent to a search, and ask if you are under arrest.
Required to.
Where it says.
Look, sir, you're gonna do this the easy way, or are we gonna take you in?
Also, you can hear it in his voice. This guy's a bean. There's a bunch of beans like cosplaying as whites, as if MAGA actually accepts them. Listen to me. Listen. I live in a dominant MAGA city, okay? Listen to me when I tell you this. Bro, stop, okay? People are giving up. People are giving up on MAGA. Just saying. Stop cosplaying as a white person. You're not. You have no right to do this. This is literally violating people's rights. He just told you. He didn't even have to answer him, but he just told you he has his papers. You're coming up to him because he has an accent. What? How is that policy? You know?
You cannot take me.
Yes, I can. Do you have documentation?
No, you can't. You literally cannot. You will, and that's why people are having issues with how ICE is handling things.
I do have my
Can
documentation.
you present it to me,
Why
please?
you asking me for my paperwork?
Because of your accent.
You have an accent too.
Where were you born, sir?
Where were you born at?
Put your hands behind your back.
So yeah, these are Nazis.
When you go out and protest in that,
Oh, and for the bootlickers that go, just follow their orders. You would bend the knee, you would bow to a king, and you will forever have that type of weak blood run in your lineage. A sheep. Weak.
that manner. Peaceful protesting is one thing. Disruption is another thing. But really, this stems from a big problem. Law enforcement should work together. And when local police are told they cannot work with ICE, think of this. If they arrested someone locally here in Aldridge and we had them in our police station, then you can call the federal agents and they could come and get them. Everyone's safe. Even
They're just picking up people and just taking them. That's not how it's working.
that family of that person who was in jail is safe. No one has to go to their house. No one has to look at them.
I mean, they're taking him to Alligator Alcatraz. What are you talking about?
The agents aren't, their lives aren't put in risk.
There's an ICE officer that was exchanging sexual acts with a detainee, so he would let her see her kid.
And our
These
police
people don't actually care about, like keeping everybody safe or whatever. They are just obsessed with control.
department is not put in risk, but they're told they cannot work together. That is the most insane thing. That is like telling the Army they can't work with the Marines and they can't.
That's not at all Jesus.
work with the Navy or the Air Force. That is where all this is breaking down. And to
And the basis of her arguments of people like this certain group on the right that still supports ICE, a lot of the basis of their arguments is based on absolute lies, like on nothing, on non-factual rumors, almost. Actually, even.
demonize people. The reason why they have
Well, at the same time, you're also demonizing all immigrants because you're saying that they kill hundreds of thousands of people a year, and that's insane. That's crazy. That's based on nothing. The only state that actually keeps up with statistics, that those types of statistics, is Texas, and it's below 5%. Like, what was it, 2.2? 3.2 per 100,000.
masks on because they've been doxxed.
No. ICE was putting masks on before there were crazies that were like threatening ICE with, doxing. But nobody's been able to do anything to ICE. It's just stuff that's publicly there that people can find out pretty easily by going like on websites or whatever. ICE was wearing masks from the start because they know what they're doing is wrong. You can say some of them joined because of the $50,000 bonus. You can say some of them joined because they were promised like a paid education. But there's gonna be some crazies in there, especially when you're not even vetting them correctly. Like this journalist, I forget her name again. Journalist applies for ICE. Laura Jadid. I keep forgetting her name.
Their families are at risk. So it's all right for people that are protesting that they aren't peaceful. I've watched them. They aren't peaceful.
Just like January 6th, right?
And they can wear a mask, but people that want
I mean, what does this have to do with the fact that people are calling them Nazis because of what they're doing?
they're just doing their job, working for the federal government. Could you imagine if our police department was doing an investigation and we went there and we tell them, don't do that, don't do that? So there are ways to do things, but there are really sensible ways. And when you're calling also, when you mentioned today's the Holocaust remembrance, when you're calling these people Nazis, that just shows ignorance to me. That is despicable.
No, I literally just,
Not allowed. This is
I just described what the Gestapo was, and then I am showing you what ICE is doing. Live.
It is heart-wrenching to me, knowing what went on in World War II with all the
You're a boomer. Like, quite literally, this lady's a boomer. You don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened. No, I'm just kidding. Not to put my tinfoil hat on, but just kidding.
people that were slaughtered there. These people have a choice to go home to their countries of origin. When
Home of the free. Wait, no. Land of the free, home of the brave. Okay? I was instilled so much patriotism when I was in elementary and middle school, and I love this country. Oh, the U.S. goated, and that's my honest opinion on the U.S. The most goated country in the world. I don't care what anybody has to say. It's the people that we are stuck with that rule over us normies. Okay, I hate the fact that my tax dollars each year go to Congress when they don't get shit done. Anyways, people want to come to this country because it's the best country in the world. Even now, with the Gestapo out on the streets, people still want to come over here because it is the country to be at. Because it's the country with most hope. Okay? And that's why this country's goated.
When
But people like this. Nah,
they Jewish people, they weren't allowed even to leave the country. They took their businesses, they took their homes, and then they slaughtered them. Okay? So it has no comparison with the Holocaust. And when you use that word and call these people Nazis and fascists,
the right or these types of conservatives are turning into what the left was during COVID. Like during the whole canceling everybody that didn't agree with you, that said some hurtful things that were gonna hurt the adult feelings. Like the left being obsessed with censoring words, like retarded. I am so happy that retarded's making a comeback. Me personally, I don't know about you guys, but when I use the word retarded, when I hear the word, I don't think of people with special needs. I don't. I automatically think of people like this. That's who I think of. I don't think of people with like disabilities, or whether it be Down syndrome, whether it be like actual autism, not like these fake autists that are you know, pretty much grifting on using autism as a grift to, like, I don't know what, blend in, feel cool, feel different or whatever. Yeah, no, I don't think about people like that. When I use the word retard, I think of people like this. Okay? And I'm so glad that the word is making a comeback, because Jesus, the left fueled everything that the right is now able to do. Just saying. That's my own personal view on things, okay?
just shows your ignorance. So please stop. Even as far as elected officials to say that. Do you think that is an intelligent way to deal with a
You just made some stuff up. What are you talking about, lady? You just made some stuff up. That immigrants kill 100,000 people a year. That is completely made up and not true. That is based on fantasy.
problem that's affecting everybody? So it affects everyone. And just as it's been explained, financially, how it affects everybody. So no one's talking about in Minnesota the fraud that's gone on there, billions and billions of dollars.
And you guys didn't even know about it. You just found out about it. That's on you. You found out about it because who actually found out about the okay, hold on. Who found out about the oh my goodness, what's it called? For the kids stay during the day. Jesus. Oh my goodness, I forgot the word. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that.
Saying for falsehoods going on. When you put a population of illegal, it also affects the illegal votings. And if you think that's not happening,
Oh my goodness, bro. This lady's actually crazy. This lady's probably QAnon or something. There's no way she just said that. There's no illegal voting done by illegal immigrants. That's not a thing. That's not possible. Is rigged elections are those possible? Yeah, sure. I'm gonna say that they are. If anything, I'd go so far as to say that it's the conservatives that are engaging in illegal voting, that are might be using hold on. Let me lock in real quick. Oof. Okay, hold on. Oof. All right, anyways.
then you're foolish. I believe
Well, no, you're a fool. You're dumb. Like, actually dumb. I'm over here crashing out over an old lady that doesn't know anything.
in law and order and civil law and order. There has to be a respect for everybody. And I do not like anyone getting hurt.
You just made some stuff up about immigrants. You don't respect anybody, except for the people that agree with you. I'm going to say it just like the left.
I don't like anyone putting
Yeah, I know you don't like anyone, lady.
themselves in harm's way. And unfortunately, this has happened and it's got to stop. But you can't go around calling people that are doing their job, that work for the federal government, the state, or local.
I don't give up. Who they work for. If they're acting like a Nazi, I'm going to call them Nazis. And ICE are Nazis. Anyways.
Government Nazis when they're doing their job protecting communities. And
They are quite literally doing the opposite of protecting. Okay? Boomer.
that is what I have to say about that. And it's unfortunate, I didn't even think I'd have to bring it up. But you have to look at everything as a whole.
Crazy. Okay. Let's move on.
Breakdown. Glenn, we've got some bad news for ICE. Can you explain what just happened in court?
Yeah, Brian, bad news for ICE for sure, but frankly, good news for peaceful protesters, journalists, and I would say democracy writ large. A federal judge, Michael Simon in Oregon, just ordered that ICE not be permitted to, gas peaceful protesters, use
Okay, but I mean, as long as those damn protesters don't start burning the city down, then okay, cool.
chemical or projectile munitions against peaceful protesters, journalists who are gathering regularly outside an ICE facility in Portland. And what I want to do is kind of set it up for our viewers, because here is what these people were trying to do, and here is what Judge Simon said. He said, in this class action, plaintiffs and all class members seek to exercise their First Amendment rights to speak, gather news, and protest lawfully and peacefully at and around the Immigration and Customs Enforcement building located at a particular address in Portland, Oregon. And I think what's most notable about this lengthy opinion, in which Judge Simon grants the petitioner's request for a TRO, a temporary restraining order, basically prohibiting excessive force by federal agents. Here is how he...
According to that lady, they're just doing their job, right? They must be doing it properly if her argument was, hey, guys, how about we stop bothering them when they're just trying to do their job? Why is there a judge passing this such thing if they're doing their job properly?
He opens this order. He says, in a well-functioning constitutional democratic republic, free speech, courageous news gathering, and nonviolent protest are all permitted, respected, and even celebrated. In an authoritarian regime, that is not the case. Our nation is now at a crossroads. We have been here before and have previously returned to the right path, notwithstanding an occasional detour. In helping our nation find its constitutional compass, an impartial and independent judiciary operating under the rule of law has a responsibility that it may not shirk. For that reason, and as more fully explained below, the court grants plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order. And Brian, the reason I read that is because the federal judiciary is getting more and more forward-leaning in not just sawing the factual and legal wood in front of it, but in saying, we recognize that we have a democracy in crisis. Why? Because of a runaway, lawless, abusive executive branch. And the courts are not simply just handing down rulings in cases. they're setting the tone, they're setting the agenda, and they're letting, Donald Trump and his corrupt minions know that the federal courts will not effing stand for it. And, I think it's high time the federal judiciary not just rule against the administration, but call out the lawlessness and the unconstitutionality of the administration. And that is what Judge Simon and others have been doing more and more frequently.
So in terms of this ruling barring ICE from using aggressive tactics against protesters and journalists, does this apply nationwide?
No, this only applies to the jurisdiction where this judge presides, that is out in Oregon. And, it's not only saying that they can't use tear gas on peaceful protesters. And frankly, there were incidents where the judge noted that peaceful protesters were being gassed, and it included children who were, being subjected to tear gas. He also said, listen, you can't fire munitions, not bullets, but you can fire other kinds of munitions at protesters. You can't fire at their heads. You can't fire at their necks. You can't fire at their torsos unless you would otherwise be authorized to use deadly force. In other words, if a protester raises a firearm and points it at an ICE officer, of course that ICE officer would be entitled to respond with deadly force under those circumstances. But, the judge is trying to do everything he can to put some constraints around how these ICE and, Customs and Border Patrol officers have been behaving, because they've been violating the constitutional rights of the people early and often, and thus far largely without any consequences at all. Let's hope that this spreads to other jurisdictions, other states, and other cities where Donald Trump is sending his masked goons. I'm sorry to call them that, but that is what they are proving to be. And, but as for right now, this only applies in the jurisdiction where Judge Simon sits.
Well, it's interesting because normally the Trump administration is super quick to appeal anything, but don't they risk, if they appeal this case and the circuit court upholds the district court decision, then they risk that applying to the entire circuit. And if they want to appeal it up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court upholds that decision, now they've got national precedent. And so don't they have a vested interest here if the administration, which of course they do, wants to continue using these aggressive tactics against protesters and journalists to kind of let this one lie and not appeal as they normally would do?
That might make a lot of sense to folks who kind of color within the lines of the legal and the criminal justice system, but there's no telling what Trump and his flunkies will do. Now, let me say, a temporary restraining order only lasts 14 days.
Hearing somebody call Trump and his flunkies, that's pretty funny. Because, never mind.
So this one will expire in 14 days.
So it becomes moot. It
extended.
becomes moot at that point anyway.
Exactly. So they may, what they may do, Brian? They may back off a little bit.
Right.
And then once this TRO expires, just go with both guns drawn, even if the guns are, loaded with pepper ball munitions and tear gas canisters. But, it's anybody's guess as to how the Trump administration and its, frankly, completely corrupt DOJ leadership will respond to anything that's going on in court these days.
Well, can't other plaintiffs across the country kind of mimic the case that was brought against the Trump administration, the successful case against the Trump administration, and seek to quell the violence at the hands of these ICE agents against protesters and journalists? Like, can't we see prosecutors or attorneys in Minnesota bring the same case, basically using the same format that they did in Portland?
They can, and what's great is they now have blueprints, right? They have the briefs that are filed by these plaintiffs. They can use those briefs, and this ruling handed down by Judge Simon is a 22-page ruling setting out lots of case law supporting why he ruled the way he did. All of that can be used by plaintiffs all across the country. And Brian, let me go back to a minute to the idea of precedent. Even though these cases don't create precedent, they only apply in the jurisdiction where they're decided. There is this atmospheric precedent that I think is being created nationwide by judge after judge in jurisdiction after jurisdiction, acknowledging that you have federal agents who are engaged in lawless and unconstitutional activity, who are engaged in excessive force against the people who are just trying to exercise their First Amendment rights. And that, begins to, the tide begins to rise, I think, on the legal front, and it will continue to embolden judges to make sure they do everything they can to hold the Trump administration accountable. So it's not actual legal precedent, but I think there is atmospheric precedent that is gathering and that will be used by judges and plaintiffs nationwide.
We have seen a lot of Americans across the country obviously share what ICE is doing, post videos about what ICE is doing, speak out against what ICE is doing. The Grammys are a testament to that. Judges live in society too, and they can see all
We live in a society.
this stuff. So to what extent do you think that this big national mood against the abuses and excesses of ICE is in a way contributing, if not directly to these cases, like you said, just in some atmospheric fashion to these cases, where it gives them maybe the few percentage points more incentive to rule against what ICE is doing?
It's a good point because, even though the petitioners are different from state to state, the defendants are largely the same. In this one, the named defendants include Kristi Noem, Donald Trump. And because you have that sort of unanimity of the defendants, it is the federal government and federal officers nationwide who are engaging in chronic misconduct, abuses, excessive force, violation of constitutional rights. All of that seeps in to a judge's determination. Even if technically they're not reaching out and looking at evidence in other states, it has to have an impact on judges when they're deciding whether the federal government in their backyard, in their jurisdiction, is overstepping legal or constitutional bounds. If they see that it's going on in cities nationwide, I think that is why, frankly, we see some of this really scorched earth language referring to, the pillars of our democracy and why they're so important and why judges have a non-negotiable duty. As Judge Simon said, we cannot shirk our duty as the judiciary to hold a runaway abusive executive branch accountable. So listen, I think things are trending in a good direction for the rule of law, for the Constitution, and for American democracy. It might not feel that because we see bad news stories, particularly.
I'm calling it right now. The Dems are gonna get the House back in midterms. I'm calling it. But there's gonna be a rigged election, so they won't be able to actually get in there. And then there also won't be a 2028 election, and like the Handmaid's Tale, pretty much, is gonna go down. That's my prediction for later this year.
In corporate media, they are forever focusing on the horror and the atrocities, and it's good for us to see that. But they also need to focus on the points of light. And right now, so many of these federal court judges are points of light. They're beacons of light calling out the executive branch's lawlessness.
Well, Glenn, like I said in the previous question, obviously there's a big national mood against ICE, but I'm curious to what extent judges witnessing other judges use this language and take more bold, aggressive stances against the overreach of a lawless rogue agency within a lawless, out-of-control administration. To what extent does that have an impact? Like, does more and more judges coming forward and using aggressive language and standing up to this administration give something of a permission structure for subsequent judges to also feel like they can step up?
It has to, and I think we've seen that just in recent days and weeks where judges are going scorched earth. They're not sticking to the facts, the law, and the Constitution. They're talking about history. They're quoting Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, a republic if we can keep it. They're putting pictures of, for example, 5-year-old Liam Ramos, who was unlawfully, unconstitutionally jailed, detained, having committed no crime. I mean,
just for the record, also, Liam and his father have been reunited, and they have been released in Minnesota. Just for the record, just to put the facts out there and stuff.
This is the judiciary beginning to rise and meet the urgency of the moment. So I think your point is exactly right, that courage begets courage. Judges like to pride themselves on being completely divorced from, walled off from what's going on in other cases, in other jurisdictions, with other plaintiffs and other defendants. But the reality is their opinions are telling us everything we need to know about how they are now viewing the chronic lawlessness and unconstitutionality of the Trump administration, and how they are stepping up because they feel like they have a responsibility to be that co-equal branch check against executive branch lawlessness.
All right, well, we will, of course, stay on top of this issue as we get more lawsuits against ICE or any other legal news. So for those who are watching, if you'd like to follow along and support our work, the best way to do that is to subscribe to both of our channels. It is and always will be 100% free, so go ahead and hit the subscribe buttons right here on the screen. I'm Brian Taylor Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.
Pretty good.
Fallout once again spreading across the Atlantic to the UK. Britain's former ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, is resigning from the upper house of Parliament over his ties to the late sex offender. Even more stunning, one British royal is calling out another. Prince Edward did not directly mention his older brother Andrew, who has been...
Jeffrey Epstein is the eye of the storm of the future that is waiting for us because of that Mossad agent. No, I'm just kidding.
stripped of his royal title over his Epstein ties, but listen to Edward's comments to CNN at a summit today.
I'm not sure this is the audience that is probably the least bit interested in that. So they all came here to listen to about education solving the future. But no, I think it's all really important always to remember the victims and who are the victims in all this.
Andrew is facing more scrutiny after the latest document drop revealed this photo of him on the floor with an unidentified woman or girl. And the photographs at this point do not suggest any wrongdoing. Andrew has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, but obviously a lot of questions raised here.
I mean, weren't there like in the files that were just released by the DOJ, right? Let me just knock these guys. Whoa, what is this?
CNN royal correspondent Max Foster is with us now from London. Max, give us the latest on the fallout where you are.
Well, we've got lots of reports about Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew's ex-wife, but they were living together for a very long time, and she had lots of relationships with Epstein as well, coming out through these files. So, for example, she's talking about not having £20,000 for rent. She was desperate to get hold of that. So a very deep relationship there, much bigger than we thought. Here in the UK, the focus is much more on the former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, because that has really roller coasted today. Initially, we heard a statement from the Speaker of the House. He read out a statement effectively from Peter Mandelson, who's a member of the House of Lords. Let's just have a listen to that.
My Lords, given the public interest and...
Oh, that's so funny that they still do that. My lord.
For the convenience of the House, I've decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
So he leaves the House of Lords, he keeps his title of Lord, but in an extraordinary move, the Prime Minister has introduced legislation tonight calling for his title to be stripped from him too. Why? This is because there were correspondence in the Epstein files between Epstein and Mandelson.
Hold on. Correspondence. They're getting served with justice because they're correspondence. Over here, you can be implicated all you want. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Ain't that insane? We're not doing anything to him. Trump is implicated in it over 1,000 times. Nothing's happening.
which suggests that Mandelson, as business secretary under Prime Minister Gordon Brown, was leaking internal government information, market-sensitive information, which Epstein could have used to make money, effectively. And the government launched an investigation, very quickly found correspondence which they were alarmed about. They've sent that to the police. Gordon Brown sent correspondence to the police as well. And tonight, in the last half hour, we've heard the British police are now investigating Peter Mandelson, the first criminal investigation coming out of this latest drop of Epstein files.
That is quite the bombshell. Max Foster, thank you so much for the latest there. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have reached a deal to testify in the House investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. The agreement means they will avoid a contempt of Congress vote. Sources telling CNN the Clintons will be deposed on February 26th and 27th, but they've added a new twist. They want to answer the Oversight Committee's questions in a public hearing. It's not clear if the Republican chair, Congressman James Comer, will accept that request. President Clinton has never been accused of any wrongdoing with Epstein, and his spokesman has said Clinton denies knowing of Epstein's crimes and cut off their relationship before they came to light. Last night, the Deputy Attorney General once again signaled there will likely be no further criminal charges stemming from the Epstein files.
It is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. And
That's insane. That is completely insane. Why would you say that? It is not illegal. It should be. It sure shit should be. It should be illegal. You should go straight to jail. Pass go, don't collect 200. No, straight.
so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things. And if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein.
Let's bring in Sarah Fitzpatrick of The Atlantic, an investigative reporter who has covered Jeffrey Epstein extensively. And just first, what is your reaction there to what we heard from Todd Blanche, and what are survivors telling you about it?
I mean, I think it's really hard to square what Todd Blanche is saying there versus what he has spent money on for the Justice Department, of taking hundreds and hundreds of attorneys to review these documents, to work overtime. Like, if there's likely to be no charges, why was there such a huge commitment of resources that have been pulled away from other violent crimes and other things that are in desperate need of law enforcement attention?
He says it's not a crime to party with Epstein. It's not a crime to email with him. That's certainly...
It should be. It should be a crime. It should be a serious crime. It should be a federal crime, to be honest.
True. But you've heard critics of what he's saying say it's very curious to party with Epstein or ask to go to his island or email with him after you know that he is a convicted pedophile. And that raises a lot of questions, and the DOJ should be more interested in investigating that. So where does that leave things, and why aren't they?
I think it's a very curious question that we have never gotten a good answer to. This investigation, unfortunately, has been mishandled by multiple administrations, both Democratic and Republican, at the local level and at the federal level. And so what I think it reflects is the Trump DOJ kind of came in that we're going to release these files, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And now we're seeing that there have been no, as far as we can tell, no major law enforcement steps taken. For example, the Clintons, I was talking to sources who have said, no, the Clintons have never been questioned by law enforcement, which, of course, you need probable cause. You need, certain steps need to be met before you would bring someone in for questioning. But it suggests a kind of lack of interest and a lack of following all of those leads. Anyone who, especially because Epstein was charged, and Maxwell were charged with trafficking, which means the moving of people for the purpose of sex. Anyone who was at these parties, who had knowledge of their whereabouts, how communication...
Finally, somebody with common sense. Like, even if you're at an after party, you know what I'm saying? Even if Epstein was already gone and you were at an after party or something like that,
were done, how the planning was. They have material information that would be important to investigators. So it just suggests that This was never really about getting answers, and especially answers that might not reflect well on the Justice Department.
So what should lawmakers be interested in learning from the Clintons?
I think there's a lot to be learned about, Epstein's behavior, his confidants, how he, how he responded to allegations, questions about even how he made his money. One of the things that has been so frustrating for me as an investigative reporter is up until these files were released over the weekend, it was very unclear what Jeffrey Epstein did all day. Now I have a better sense, which is email a lot, and cultivate this network very deliberately. But I think there's anyone who was in his orbit who understood who was involved, who may have had knowledge, that's all relevant information. It doesn't mean that they were aware of criminality, but it means that they have insight that might bring investigators towards people that did.
And then on this issue of redactions, there is a hearing tomorrow, and you have lawyers for victims saying, yeah, our victims sort of trusted DOJ to have all of these files put out, but you put out these files with a ton of their personal information in it. It was a failure of DOJ. What's going to happen with the files and with what they're asking for?
It's unclear. So there'll be a hearing tomorrow in New York, and a judge will hear arguments from lawyers for the victims as well as representatives from the government. I think it would be quite extraordinary to take down this volume of information once it has already been disseminated. I think there's not a lot of great legal precedent for that. However, it was a real, there were so many months, there was so much time, there were so many people who.
We're on a month and a half, by the way, that they should have been released. They got released like last week or something. Almost everything blacked out. The names blacked out. Weirdly enough, though, not Trump's. Ain't that weird?
Were involved in preparing for this release, and the fact that it is done so haphazardly indicates either a lack of attention or a kind of perhaps some other motive. And I think that's what a judge will have to evaluate.
Sarah Fitzpatrick, always great to get your insights on these new developments. Appreciate it.
No. No! It better take me back, bro. We were definitely gonna annihilate that little puppy. I don't know what's going on with my internet. Maybe it's on my internet. Okay, well. Did I go over everything? Yes. Oh, right. Okay, well, that's that. Why? Why did I just lose a level? Bro, why did I lose a level? That's not fair. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, man, I got pissed. I forget you can do that, though. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyways. I start freaking out right away. Anyway, so that's that. What's that? I don't know. Wait, did I actually? Didn't I? I did not. Wait, what happened? Turkey Town dropped a 41-minute response. Yeah, okay, that was 2 days ago. Wait, where is it? Where is it? So I did not know this. QAnon shaman. Did I already go over this? No, huh? I don't think so. What just happened? Wait a minute. What just happened? Yo, no. No. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe that. Okay, anyways.
This is Jacob Chansley, better known as the QAnon shaman. He became known around the world after the January 6th attack.
There he is. That's the QAnon shaman. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Ahead of the 5-year anniversary of the Capitol attack, I went to Phoenix to see what he's up to now.
Are you still a Trump supporter?
No. I thought you knew that.
Why not?
The man alone refusing to release the...
So yeah, you can see that this was one of the January 6ers that were pardoned by Trump. He was like one of the main guys that got in there and were like looking for Nancy Pelosi, right?
Epstein client list was enough for me and I think a lot of other people to be like, okay, this is bullshit.
Jake begged.
And that's called, at the very least, okay, no, he apparently he's like self-aware of the whole QAnon thing being kind of silly. Like he was going along with the meme, the whole QAnon meme. Damn, bro, I could have sworn I was about to get got. So you know, at the very least, this guy, you know, he realized, okay, that's the last straw. At least he had a last straw, you know. Some of these MAGA people are still not giving up on him. A lot of them, actually. But you are now seeing the beginning of the end of the support for this movement that was MAGA. They believe that through their enforcement, you know, they could make America great again. And it's like, what do you mean make America great again? Like, I'm not saying it's not, because I love this country, but what time are you being specific of? Like, what do you mean make America great again? America's goated. What do you mean?
Guilty to obstruction of an official proceeding and was sentenced to 41 months in prison. He was later pardoned by Trump.
Looking back on Jan 6 now, how do you feel? Do you have any regrets? Do you regret that you went?
Not at all.
Even though you had prison, all that stuff?
Even though I had prison and all that stuff. No regrets. I don't live with regret.
Did you ever identify as the QAnon shaman?
Never. Not once.
But you were a Q follower?
Well, kind of. I had a sign that I carried around with me for a little while that said Q sent me, but that was because of the meme Q sent me.
A key part of QAnon's conspiracy theories are claims of a child-abusing cabal of elites. Now, like many of its followers who are loyal to Trump, Jake has stopped supporting the president because of his initial resistance to releasing information about Epstein, a convicted sex offender.
One thing, and if you
go ahead,
don't mind me, one thing that QAnon has done, right, is to like insert so much confusion and disinformation about like who was actually involved with Epstein that then it's just now impossible to know what the truth is.
The idea here is anybody can have a story, anybody can have a theory, but the water is so convoluted that the truth will never be officially established.
This is Jacob Chansley, better known as the QAnon shaman. He became known around the world after the January 6th attack.
There he is. That's the QAnon shaman.
I need some armor on the morrow.
5 years after the January 6th Capitol riot, the controversial debate over its legacy continues. Democrats marked the day by highlighting the violence and its aftermath, while Republicans focused on security failures and questioned the narrative. Today, the White House released a report revising the event's history as President Trump defended his actions, claiming he only called for a peaceful march. Over 1,500 people were charged, though most were pardoned by the president, who was impeached but later acquitted. One of the most high-profile figures from the day is now speaking out. That man's known as the QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley. He says he no longer supports Donald Trump. Speaking to CNN, the Navy veteran criticized Trump's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case and said he opposes human trafficking. Chansley says he was motivated by election integrity, not personal loyalty to Trump. He did serve prison time but was later pardoned after Fox News aired security video showing him being escorted inside the Capitol by police. Prosecutors dispute his attorney, Albert Watkins, who said that footage was not shared during discovery and could have helped in his defense. California Congressman Doug LaMalfa has died. The Republican from Northern California passed away during emergency surgery. He served 13 years in Congress representing a large rural district near the Oregon border. He was known for supporting rural communities and recently helped secure funding for forest area schools. His death, why this matters on a larger scale here politically, it narrows the slim Republican majority in the House. Governor Gavin Newsom will call a special election to fill his seat. LaMalfa leaves behind his wife and 4 children and a grandchild. He was only 65 years old.
Yeah! Yeah! I got the last hit! That's pretty cool, okay? There is a sliver of hope that, there's a sliver of hope that, things are going to turn around come midterms, okay? As long as the Republicans don't have the House. That's it. That's all we need. Then we'll make it to 2028. If that doesn't happen, guys, it's GG's. It's curtains, okay? And hopefully I'm super wrong and I don't even know what I'm talking about. Hopefully I am dead wrong and this is going to be an embarrassing live come midterms, after midterms. But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover. I hope you have a good night. Get some sleep. Drink some water. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you tomorrow. And the next day. And the next day.